Perfect. So welcome everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar on building a world-class L&D program. We're super excited to speak with our two panelists today. First, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Caitlin Foley. I'm head coach at Sama. And at Sama, we're looking to bring the power of executive coaching to employees at all levels and tenures in organizations supported through our SaaS platform. We have collected a number of questions from the audience in advance, and I've grouped them into different categories that we'll go through. We'll try to hit them all. If we don't, we may include some things in our follow-up email, so keep an eye out for that. But before we get started, I wanted to introduce our two panelists. We're super excited to have Maggie and Monica with us today. Monica is in HR and Learning Development at EQT Partners. She's worked in HR for 15 years across a variety of industries, but now she drives learning and development at EQT, mainly focusing on the EQT Academy. At EQT, Monica has found her niche in helping align employee growth and performance with the organization's overall goals, which will be super helpful. There's actually a question in there for us. Maggie, who is joining us from Toronto, Maggie Clinton, she's the founder, leadership designer, and coach at Trinity Leadership Coaching. She focuses on understanding each business to co-design pragmatic solutions that address their needs. She has deep experience in facilitating leadership programs and end-to-end program management. Before founding Trinity, Maggie worked closely with senior leaders to design, develop, and deliver high-impact leadership programs at CPP Investments, one of the world's leading global pension firms. So welcome to you both. We're super excited. And I have grouped the questions into a few different categories. So planning in general, 2023 specifics, culture, and learnings. So I'm going to go through them in sort of that order, but please do expand on anything that you feel appropriate. But just as a starting point, how do you ensure that your development programs are linked to company objectives? And I'm going to ask Monica first, since we had that in your bio.
Okay, sure. Amazing to be here, by the way. I think you nailed the introduction. And how do I firstly make sure that you understand the objectives? And secondly, how has each department understood this objective and made them theirs? Because that's when you come in as learning and development and can have a close dialogue on how to close some of those knowledge gaps in the way to reach then the goals. I probably will come back to this several times, but it's so much about the dialogue with the people in the organization and listen to how do they actually connect this. And if they have missed it, make sure that you help them to also reach those goals.
Great. And Maggie?
Yeah, thanks. And I would echo Monica, really thrilled to be here. And thanks so much for the invitation, Caitlin. I think I would sort of characterize what Monica is saying as clarity. And I know as a learning development professionals, we've been in those situations where we're kind of digging and trying to get clarity. And it becomes apparent that the client or the business partner doesn't really have clarity on what exactly they're trying to achieve. So I would say clarity. I would add two things to that. I would say process and relationship, which I think Monica's alluded to. I think we need to make sure there's a very formal process in place for us to be part of that. So we're not getting the business objectives sort of on the back end, but there's a step in that process for us as learning professionals to be involved. I think another really good idea for a process is having a learning champion or some sort of learning committee where you have business folks working really closely with learning folks on an ongoing basis. So that's a formal process you can put in place, the creation of the learning champion. I think to Monica's point as well, the relationships are so important. So we need a formal process, but we also need that ongoing relation to continue to check on an ongoing basis. Is this really what we're trying to do? Is this really meeting your needs? So I think it's that combination of a formal process and deep relationship.
Great. And tied to that, how do you go about getting buy-in from leadership teams around your planning and ideas for the L&D team?
Yeah, I think it starts with, I think it builds on the deep business relevance. So once we're meeting that deep, I think that's the first step, right? It has to be business relevant in order for them to buy in. And then I think engaging them in the process. So the most successful programs I've been part of, there was a very strong sponsor, and there were people who were really engaged in making it successful and business relevant. And they were kind of checking all along that process to make sure that the language we were using and the program we were building would speak to participants. So again, I think it's very relationship driven and very business driven.
Yeah, I can just agree on what you're saying. I think share some success stories as well on the programs that you've already have going on. Share the success stories around this, and you will have an easier time to keep them going. I think stakeholders is great to get them involved in programs. And also what I often do when I build programs is to involve future participants and managers in the process, so they take more accountability. For when I built the academy way back, it wasn't actually delivered by me, but it came from the business lines. Even though I was in the background, I asked them to be the delivery of it, saying that this is a program that we have set up.
Great.
And can I just add to that, Caitlin? I think the success stories, what I would add to that is data. So my background is investment, so very data driven, and data was so important. To the extent that you have data that you're able to share with people to either demonstrate the need or to illustrate the success of a program, I think data can be really powerful, particularly if you're working in a certain type of organization.
And that ties very nicely to my next question, which is, how do you measure the return on investment / success of a development program? Because we know that that's super important.
Yeah, I'm happy to take an initial stab at that. Yeah, I think there's different ways to do that, depending obviously on, and I think again, it'll be very tied to the business needs. So what was the goal of the program? If you're in a sales organization, was it to increase sales? So what's look at the business measures. I think in leadership development, so there's the business measures, there's the people measures. Was it, employee engagement scores? Is it retention? Is it promotion? So I think there's a lot of data that we as learning professionals can dig into and can use. Obviously, I think level 1 data is really important. If you're doing a leadership program, can you do a 360 before and a 360 after? If you have upward feedback, can you see changes in upward feedback scores? And I've certainly been involved in programs where we've seen the changes in upward feedback scores for leaders over time. So that's important. I think the other thing you can do, and this is a bit of maybe an interesting, is you can look at employee engagement by participant. And I've seen data to show, or been involved in data that shows that just attending a program, just feeling like your employer is investing in you, can drive up your individual employee engagement score. So if there's a way that you can link that, and we know that more engaged employees or more productive employees are more likely to stay. So that feeling like I've been invested in by having attended a program can link to discretionary effort and motivation.
Yeah, and shortly, just to add to that, I think you touched upon it, is that already when you build the program, and make sure that you know what you want the outcome to be. What's the changes we want this program to make? Otherwise, it's hard to come up with the ROIs afterhand. It's easier if you know them already when you build a program.
Right. And tied to that, and you touched on this a bit, Maggie, how do you ensure, so we've talked about getting leaders engaged, we've talked about metrics and ROI. How do you ensure that your end users, your employees, are engaged with the programs once all that's in place? Monica, maybe you can start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things for me is that connection, so that they know, why do I go into this program? That starts the engagement there. It's also about the manager support. Does the manager support you to go into these programs? But probably it starts even before they are invited, in terms of they knowing, have you promoted the program so people already before want to attend? So it's a lot about promotion of the programs, I would say.
Okay. Anything to add there, Maggie?
Yeah, I think we'll just add to Monica's point, leadership, business relevance. I mean, I think we've said this, link to the business, link to the business, link to the business. And I think once people are in the program, it's just really good design, and particularly in a virtual setting, that design is even more important. So how are we kind of keeping people on their toes? How are we changing up the pace and keeping it moving really quickly? How are we making it fun? There's data to show that when people are having fun in learning, they are more likely to retain that information. So I think business relevance, promotion, and then just really good, solid design when people are in the program.
Great, great. And so thinking more about specifics for the current time and 2023 and whatever that might bring to us, what are some key trends that you're thinking about in L&D for 2023? And Maggie, you mentioned hybrid or remote situations. We've also had a question around, how do you design for hybrid or fully remote teams when thinking about design?
Yeah, did you want me to start on the hybrid piece? Yeah, I think there's interesting data to show, and actually lots of articles are out around this, that the virtual learning can be, if really done well in certain situations, can be as effective as in person. I'm actually still a proponent of combining some virtual content with in-person small groups. In person, if you can. I think we still want to connect on that human level, but definitely small group learning. So foundations, concepts in a virtual setting, complemented by small group application. Again, I think it just goes back to good design is more important than ever. So make sure you have a really solid facilitator. It sounds obvious, but it's not. Make sure you have the technology right. I've been in sessions where, we put people into breakout rooms and, half the people drop off, then by the time you get them back on. So just test the technology. Make sure you've got the right platform. Again, it all seems obvious, but unfortunately not as obvious as it might be. Make sure that you keep it, particularly virtually, as tight as you can. And then I just think supplement it with lots of learning in the flow. And I think we're going to talk about that later on in the session. But what are the ways that you can supplement that coming out of the session so people have what they need when they need it?
Great. And Monica, I know you've done hybrid training. What would you offer up as pointers there?
I mean, I can just echo what you say. Design becomes even more important when it's, because you need to build trust virtually, which is so much harder. And to have that in back of mind will be equally more important, really. I also, something that we call glocal. It's like it's a global setting, but try to make local face-to-face if possible. Settings.
We both just wrote down that word. Did you just write that down, Maggie? I love that word.
Yeah, I did. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, but to have, I really believe in those, even though we can't bring everyone together, maybe if there can be local elements within the training, that's something really good as well. And technology is also one of those things. But I think design to make sure that you have those icebreakers built in, they will be even more important.
Great. And so coming back to trends, we've had a couple of questions around trends for 2023. And I'm compounding my questions here. what are some trends that you are thinking about? And also, are there particular skills that people should be focused on now? Just generically, are there certain skills that should be looped into the training programs that are relevant to 2023?
I think the problem is really what skills are you not to look at? It's you come in with so many skill needs now. I've been coming into 2023. We don't know which environment we're really going into. I think leading in downturn will be one of those skills we will need to address and understand the market.
Okay. Maggie, any thoughts there?
Yeah, let me go to the trend piece first, and Caitlin Sama has done a great job on pulling those trends together. Also, if people haven't looked at the LinkedIn Learning report, a great sense of trends in that as well. I think there's kind of 3 words that were coming up for me. One is flexibility. We are in, I like to say the future of work is here, and it's flexible. For some organizations, that means a 4-day week. It certainly means, it's not 9 to 5 anymore. And that can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. It definitely means learning in the flow of work. And I'll come back to that in just a second. It means that people want tailored solutions that work for them in the moment. So this idea of learning in the flow of work, I think, can mean many different things. It means people get the skills and the information they need when they need it. That could be as simple as a manager site that has, 2-minute videos on, hey, I'm going to conduct a difficult conversation with a direct report. Let me just review that 2-minute video. Hey, I'm going to ask my manager for something. I'm going to go negotiate. Let me just, I know right there's that 2-minute video I can check out right there. So it's these quick bursts of learning that people can access when they need them, and they're easily accessible. If you're on Microsoft Teams, there's maybe there's a channel on just-in-time resources. So I think it's that. I think it's letting people having a really clear learning plan and making them aware of how you as a manager are supporting them in that learning plan along the way. It could be something like gigs. So letting someone work on a project in another area of the business for 10 or 20% of their time. So they're building a skill, they're building their network, but they're doing it in the flow of the work that they would already do every day. So I think that learning in the flow of work is a really interesting concept. And I think we need to get really creative. And then I think we need to brand it because sometimes people are getting learning and development, and unless you say, we're giving you learning and development, it didn't happen. So I think you really need to brand. I think there's an awesome opportunity to brand that whole learning in the flow of work and wrap up a bunch of different ideas under that.
Yeah, and that ties back to promoting for employees and
Exactly.
Sharing success stories.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it's we can create as many catalogs or toolboxes or whatever it is, but we need to get the usage up. I see really that the demand is the mix, that they still want to meet, network, and get those face-to-face trainings, but to have the availability to search themselves as well, and understand where to search and not be overwhelmed, because that's a balance where I see that we struggle a bit, that in the tools that we have, how do you not get overwhelmed of the data that's in there? So if there's a way to work with AI in like doing the proposals for you, I think, or have a chatbot or anything like that, that would absolutely be something to think around.
Can I add to that comment on technology, Monica? Because I think you hit the nail on the head. The availability of learning technology on the market has just really exploded. So I would say, yes, look at how you can use technology. And then I would say, really ask yourself what you're trying to achieve and why that's the right technology. So I would say yes, and be really clear. It's really easy to end up with 10 different systems that don't talk to each other and nobody knows where to go to get what they need. So make sure you're working with your IT partners and mapping out a way to use technology that doesn't overwhelm people, but facilitates a solution.
Great. We also got a number of questions. I'm going to try to roll them into one here. But with the idea that we may be going into a recession in 2023, which will have an impact on the whole environment, but also budgets and time investment, et cetera. How do you ensure, there was also a question about planning for a startup, how you plan an L&D program for a startup, which I think the underlying message was possibly with limited resources, and for a team, maybe a smaller team or a team that's rapidly growing. So what would you suggest for people if you really had to pare it down and hit the core themes that you need to cover, but maybe with less manpower to deliver, less budget? What are the key things to think about if you are working in an environment that's quite different in 2023?
Emphasize on values. That's one of the things. That's kind of, what are our values? What direction are we going in now? And make that to one road. I'm not sure I followed on. What was the actual question? Can you?
Well, there were a couple that I'm lumping together. So how do you ensure you're getting the most from your L&D investment, both time and money, during a recession or a potential recession? There was a question about how would you design an L&D program for, say, a startup versus a larger corporate where the resources might be different. And then there was a bit around things coming in 2023. How do you prepare? So I think it boils down to, if you have fewer resources, how do you get the most out of them?
I think from at least from my perspective, I think that depends very much probably on which industry you're in. But that said, from my perspective, see very much an opportunity now where people might not have as much workload as they've had previously in our industry, which means that I will benefit from having more people available internally to help me co-create things. So this is really the time when we can benefit from how can we work together in developing internal programs. It's cost effective, and it's really connecting back to that. How do you get engagement? And that's by including people.
Great. So there's actually an upside there potentially of having a bit more.
Could be, yeah.
Bit more. Okay, Maggie, any thoughts on my multi-compounded question?
Yeah, I would say two things. I would say one, if I was going to put a lot of eggs in one basket, I would put them in the frontline manager basket for a couple of reasons. They oversee 70–80% of our employee population. I think we historically have put a lot of money into C-suite. And I think the biggest value is really the interface of the manager and the employee. That's where they're having their career conversations. That's where the manager is saying, you know, what learning and development can we get you to help you on that career path? That's where the coaching happens. That's also where it can go really sideways. There's lots of data to show that, you know, people leave because they've had a bad managerial experience. People stay because they have great managers. So I think really doubling down on the quality of your frontline managers and their ability to grow and develop their teams and access the resources available to them, I think is really important. I think it's also the population that's really taken if I may say, a hit in the pandemic. Is middle managers we are really asking a lot of them, and the expectations of middle managers are shifting so significantly. So that's where I'd put a lot of my support. The other place where I would put, and my research in my master's was on learning sustainment. And what we saw was that one of the most powerful tools for learning sustainment is small group development and peer groups. And that can be learning on the job. That can be really cheap. I shouldn't say cheap, but cost effective. And it builds their cross-functional networks, which is so important. Gives them an opportunity to coach each other. You're building their coaching skills, and it can build trust which is so important. So I would say those two things: look for ways to upskill your managers and really invest in them. look for ways to build really strong learning networks or learning circles, or peer networks, whatever you want to call them, and really leverage the power of peer learning.
That's great. That's great. So moving into more the culture bucket of questions, one question that came up was, what do you see as L&D's role in supporting employee well-being?
I think that's really a collaboration with the HR teams and managers. I think we can absolutely do one-time off well-being programs. Are those coming out with the most effective kind of results? Not sure. It needs to be embedded in all trainings we do. So I think we do have an important part to play there in terms of how do we embed it in leadership trainings? How do we embed it in communication trainings? And in all aspects, I would say it's a bit about nudging it in and not think that you're solving it by a one-time training or a one-time solution. But for me, that's really a collaboration with HR and managers.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And I think that was actually one of my trends. I think wellness is not going away, and thank goodness it's not going away. I'd go back to the point of managers and that interface, that relationship between the managers. So making sure that managers have the skills and tools that they need to manage their own well-being. Emotional intelligence, I almost hesitate to say that because in some ways it's gotten a little bit bad rap. It's like being nice. It's like, I just have to learn to be nice. I think it's not. It's actually figuring out how to manage your emotions, all different kinds of emotions all the time. So I think helping people understand and manage their emotions is really important. The other thing I would say, and I think to your point, Monica, I think you said this, it's a collaboration. Just make sure you've got the right people at the table. I've seen situations where you've got, your HR team, your learning team, and your benefits team or total rewards, where everybody's actually doing their own kind of little solutions. So just more than ever, collaboration is really important, because to your point, Monica, it's going to touch everyone and everything. And we need to make sure we're really on the same page.
Great, great. And I have a couple of questions. I'll try not to lump them together. Around different generations in the workplace and how we have more generations than ever before, and probably quite big differences in working styles. So one question, millennials and Gen Z want independent and self-directed learning. How do you design your development programs to support different generations and learning styles? Maybe start with you, Monica.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we do have a very young base of employees here. It's kind of, it says, like, research says that this is what's wanted, but still, when you get them into face-to-face trainings, when you get them into the classroom or whatever setting you have, they really, really like it as well. So it's really about the mix, I think, and making sure that you have that possibility to give them in the flow training as well as the training that will happen maybe more seldom, but in the classroom. But I think it goes back very much to what we already discussed around having in the flow possibilities, and also set up workshops, open, like topical workshop, breakfast, lunches, where you have the open space to discuss. That's what we are working a lot on. And it's often more team or at least collaboration based. So it really isn't global, it's not, but it's rather about where do we find the need here and now? And how do we connect teams that will work together? So this is not a place where you need to think global maybe, or it's one size fits all. But rather, how does two teams connect together, and how do they have a workshop together?
Great.
Yeah, I would, in fact, it just adds that. I think this goes back to the business relevant and this idea of reverse mentoring. Ask them, So make sure on any sort of learning program you're developing, make sure you've got some more junior folks on and ask them what works for them, and they'll tell you. And they may be closer to the technology trends than some more senior folks are, and they're going to have great ideas on what they want. So, if you're creating a learning partner role or you're creating a learning committee, a departmental learning committee, make sure you've got the junior folks and make sure they have a voice. So make sure that you're asking and then you're really listening, you're piloting, get some junior folks in the, say what would work for you. I think we think it's all apps all the time, and maybe it's not. Maybe they don't want an app. Maybe don't, so just check it.
Great.
I think you're really on to something there with the piloting, because trying things out is what they appreciate. Kind of, we had a voice in this, we got involved in it, let's try it out. And if it doesn't work, well, we'll shift it and do something else the next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And a slightly related question. So there was a report recently that identified opportunities to learn and grow as a top driver for company culture. And it moved from 9th place in 2019, pre-pandemic, to first place in 2022. So obviously there's been a different couple of years, but what else do you think might be impacting that people are making that a number one priority?
Yeah, I'm happy to, oh, sorry, go ahead, Monica. I'm happy to take a stab at that. Actually, I think it's, McKinsey talked about it was the great attrition, the great resignation. Now they're saying it's the great renegotiation. So people are just really demanding something different from their workplace. I think the pandemic gave people a lot of time to think about what really matters to them. And, people have decided what matters to them is a career where they feel like they can learn and grow and develop their skills. And, that intrinsic, I think what's interesting, what really drives discretionary effort is not extrinsic motivation, it's intrinsic motivation. There's a Daniel Pink article on that, a drive, or a Daniel Pink book, and he calls about a mastery. The ability to master something really drives people intrinsically. And so I think people have just stepped back and said, how do I really want to live my life, and how does my career fit into that, as opposed to, here's my career and how does my life fit in.
Yeah. And Monica, you were going to say?
I think it connects very much to the trend within well-being as well. So in general, people come in focusing not only on the company and what am I to deliver to the company, but what are the company to, how will they help me to grow, and who will I become? That's kind of the question you get before they've started already. So I think it becomes more I focused in a good way.
Okay, and I'm curious, how does that impact, or does it, the people who've been around longer, who maybe have a different, joined at a different time and had a different point of view? How, thinking about differences in generations, what's the impact that has on the organization?
It has a huge impact on leadership, in being able to manage different people who is not like you, and make them thrive in who they are, and taking in, but goes back to the bias discussion as well, in terms of taking in different opinions and being open for that. So I think for our perspective, it really comes back to leadership and how we train our leaders to understand that they need to be open for this, because there is differences. There is differences where you can see, like, but I worked like this. Yeah. That's 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, Maggie, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I just have to chuckle a little bit, because I've been in so many conversations, and you've got, Gen X's talking about those darn millennials, like, no, they're not, they don't want to work. And then you've got these conversations, and it's a group of maybe millennials and they're saying those Gen Ys, like, I just don't know what to do with them. And so I feel like, I just feel like generationally, to your point, Monica, it's just about seeing the possibility in each person. And I think it's less, I think it feels to me more like a headline than a reality. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it feels to me more like a headline. And I think what it comes back to is each person's individual and how am I going to help develop this individual, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever, like, how am I going to help them? And let's just kind of throw off the generational labels because I don't buy them necessarily all the time.
I
Yeah, there
agree,
have
and I
always been
actually
different working styles.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, and that's
Yeah.
exactly to what I was getting. That I even hear some people getting quite tired of being put in some kind of box of generation.
mhm.
This is how you are because you are generation XYZ, whatever it is. So no, let's talk about bringing in different backgrounds, bringing in different kind of objections, or how do you say it, but different views to the discussion, and that will open up the discussion much more than to speak about generations.
Great. And there's actually a question from the audience. Do you think there are or should be differences for L&D on graduate programs compared to full-time roles? Any thoughts there on the differences between?
Hey, Caitlin, could we ask the person who's asked the question to just clarify that a bit? I have some thoughts, but I want to make sure I'm answering the right question.
Okay, bear with me. I got to scroll through to.
And
Okay.
while you're scrolling, I'll just give some initial thoughts. And Nim, I think it's Nim who's asked this question. I'm not sure if I'm
Yes.
getting it right or not, but I think are we talking about new graduates coming into your firm, and should our investment in them be differentiated from our investment to regular folks? I'm not sure if that's the question or not. What I've seen happen is I think it is super important. Maybe Nim's kind of clarified that. We're launching our grad program next year, now 12. Oh, yeah, I can see that. And then the regular full-time people are sort of like, why is all the investment in the graduate folks, and what about us? So I think it's great that you're investing in your new graduates, and I think it's going to increase the likelihood that they'll stay with you and that you're building that leadership pipeline, because really leadership pipeline starts right as soon as they come in. So I think that's amazing. I would say if I could, and Nim, again, I don't know your situation, but if to the extent that you can engage, are there ways to engage those current employees in the new grad program, the graduate program, so they're leaders or mentors, or make them feel special about being part of it somehow? Maybe that's one way. But if there are ways that you can offer a similar level of training at maybe a budget issue, I'm not sure, but I would want to offer some sort of training for regular full-time as well, if you can. And how can you leverage the amazing experience of these regular full-time folks in the development of your new grads? Yes, we could get some of our current leaders and managers to support. So yeah, I think that's absolutely you have to get them in there, because what you're not just, you're building the skills, Nim, but you're also building the culture. So they need to be interacting with senior folks as much as possible, as quickly as possible, so they know what does it mean to work here, not just what are the skills that I need to build, but what's the culture, and they'll learn that by being around other people who model your culture.
Yeah, going back to Monica also talking about making sure the values are embedded in the training. They're the people who are modeling that behavior. Great. So I'm going to move on to learnings. I have one question for both of you, which so not recently necessarily, but at some point in your career, is there, what is the biggest learning you had from a program that did not go well? And happy to start with either of you.
I can start. I think my biggest learning was a program I put together without involving people. I didn't listen to need, and I didn't listen, or I didn't take the target group into account in the building of the program. I just assumed, which made the program a failure. And back to something that Maggie said earlier, I took something off the shelf and thought it would work without tweaking it so it used our wordings, our setup on how we approach things. So that was, I took the easy way out and it didn't work.
Great, great. And based on your answers earlier, I can see what the learnings were.
Yeah, exactly.
Great, great. Maggie, how about you?
Yeah, I would say get the pilot group right. So an organization that I worked in, we were bringing in a speaker from, let's say it was not a local speaker, and we just wanted to pilot this person. You know, I thought, well, we've got them here, and you know, we've got to get as many people in the room. Bad idea. We did get as many people in the room as we could. We got some very influential people in the room who maybe weren't necessarily supporters, and it didn't go well at all. So it's okay for a pilot not to go well. You just don't want a pilot not to go well in front of like a lot of people. So get the pilot group right, keep it small. You want a few people in there. You want some supporters. You definitely want some people who are going to poke holes, but people are going to poke holes in a productive way because they're engaged. So just be really careful. If it's a pilot, make sure it's a pilot. And got that wrong. And you know, I think it was an important topic, and I think it put us back a few months on a very important topic. So yeah.
Great, great. So there's been lots of great answers here and lots of learnings. I've been jotting down tons of notes. But as sort of a wrap-up question for both of you, what would be your top tip for someone in planning? It could be more than one tip if you want, but what's your top tip for someone planning an L&D program for next year? Monica, should we start with you?
Sure. I would say make sure you have your stakeholders right and close to you, and create that group of trusted people in the organization that can give you both the sharing, but also the truth around what they think on what you're building. So stay close, and conversations is my top tips.
Great. And Maggie?
Well, Monica's top tip was so I'm going to go to tip number 2 and 3. If I can throw in a first tip, and this is maybe more of a career tip, but just love what you do. Make sure that every day that, and it's not going to be perfect all the time, but that you really love the work you're doing, because that will show up in how you deliver it. So, you know, find something you love to do, and hopefully get paid for as well. I think the other thing I would say is don't be afraid to ask why. So make sure you're really crisp and clear on why you're doing something. I think we've all been in situations where we get pretty far down the road on something. And if you were to ask, you know, everybody in the room, why are we doing this? Not everybody would have the same answer. And some people wouldn't even really be able to say why. So make sure you're really clear on why. In an ideal situation, you know, when you ask the team, why are we doing this? Everybody would say the same sort of answer. So if you don't have that level of strategic clarity on why this is the right program now, why this is the right way to deliver it now, then you need to, it might still be right, but maybe you need to go back and make sure you're clear on what you're doing and how it links to the broader strategy. So ask why, and ask it a few times. Keep asking it. at regular intervals. So.
Great. I love that. I love that. So thank you both for sharing your wisdom and experience with this group. And thank you everyone for attending. I know it's a busy time of year for people in your professions. So hopefully you walk away with a few tips and learnings today or things to think on. I also wanted to mention, if you're interested in learning more about Sama, keep an eye out for a follow-up email where we'll be sending out some information and an offer for those that signed up today. But that is it from me. Thank you, Monica and Maggie. It was great to hear from you both, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks, Caitlin. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Great being here.
Bye-bye, everyone.